Hey there, this is Anna Maria Helt, herbalist and microbiologist with My Custom Herbs as well as with Osada Natural Health, my own wellness practice. And given that we had what's now a pretty large wildfire start not far outside of Durango yesterday and grow from 40 acres to over 1,100 today, I thought it's time for the annual discussion on how to support your respiratory tract during fire season. And this is very relevant in many parts of the West right now. Arizona's burning, Colorado's burning, a number of other states are. But even in the East, if you happen to be in Florida, lots of fires going on there. So what I'm going to do is talk about a couple of simple herbs that you can use to help soothe your airways and support yourself during the fires, because the smoke, the particulates therein are really irritating, and we want to do everything we can to support respiratory health, especially given the current pandemic. We want our lungs and airways in general to be strong. And so a couple of simple herbs that are easy to find in the wild in many places, not everywhere, or alternatively through an herb shop. And for people that are wanting more personalized attention, a more personalized formula, that can happen after a quick chat. So PM me, contact me at here on Facebook or on YouTube, or you can go to my site, osada.com, O-S-A-D as in dog, H-A.com. Anyway, so the two herbs I'm going to talk about are mullen leaf and mallow, and these are very common weeds, and again, depending on where you live, they can be quite easy to find, and I'll come back to that. But first I'm going to talk about mullen leaf. So here is some that I recently dried after an excursion with my friend Karen. This is a wonderful plant. You may be familiar with mullen. It has big, beautiful gray-green leaves that are quite hairy, that start as a basal rosette near the ground, and it's a biennial, so it will grow for 2 years and then send up a big flowering stalk, topped with a big spike of beautiful yellow little flowers, this later on in the second year. And so a relatively short-lived plant, and I'm going to focus specifically on the leaves today, although the whole plant is medicinal. So very common weed, really beautiful plant. You want to get the leaves before the plant sends up its flowering stalk, because once it's ready to go and reproduce, the plant's going to die off. So the medicine in the leaves might not be ideal at that point. If you are harvesting your own leaves, you want to make sure to wash them well and then squeeze them dry. They actually hold a lot of water, and then you can dry them and put them in a jar, airtight, for tea. You can also make a fresh tea with them. In terms of tea making with mullen leaf, you want to make sure you strain it really well, because the leaves do have irritating hairs on them, and if you just strain through, say, a little metal colander or a strainer, you're going to get too many of those hairs in your tea, and it's going to wind up being irritating instead of soothing. Yeah? So mullen, verbascum thapsus is the botanical name of this plant, and it's kind of, bastardized as a weed, and people curse it when it shows up on their land. It's actually a very striking, beautiful, and immensely useful plant. So it is a mild expectorant. An expectorant is something that helps one to cough up phlegm or mucus. And mullen, though, is also mildly moistening. The technical word for that is demulcent. You can use that if you're like me and you hate the word moist. And so these two properties together can make mullen great for people that have sticky phlegm or sticky mucus in their respiratory tract that they're trying to get out. This is an herb that can help soothe the respiratory tract and help open up the airways. And so, I'm already feeling it with the smoke in the air here in Durango. So mullen leaf is a great plant for easing breathing, useful for people that wheeze, especially if that wheezing does get worse during wildfire season. And the herb itself is actually very gently relaxing, not just to your airways, but to you. Not so overtly that it's going to knock you out or make you sleepy during the day, but it can just help kind of chill you out a little bit. This is an herb that is particularly turned to for folks who have chronic, so pre-existing respiratory conditions, things like COPD, asthma. You use it in between attacks, emphysema, people that have a history of smoking. So folks that already have irritated lungs that get even more pissed off during fire season, mullein leaf can be really useful. And it is a tonic for the lungs, so it has slow building effects for improving the health of the respiratory tract. So you can use the leaves as an ethanol water extract, a tincture, but they're really best used as a tea. And so for fresh leaf, again, you want to wash it well, but it would be about a tablespoon roughly of chopped leaf per 8 ounces or 1 cup of water. For dry leaf, such as what I have here, you want to chop it up and it would be about a teaspoon. And while you can, and so you basically just boil your water like you're making a regular cup of tea and pour it over and then let it steep for about 15 minutes or so and strain it. And you can actually keep that in the fridge for a few days or so. And if you want to make it taste better, you can throw other things in it if you'd like, for flavor, whatever spices and flavorings you like. I like adding actually a little bit of lemon juice to it, and that can make it taste good. You can add a little bit of local raw honey, and that can make it taste good. Don't get carried away with that, but a little bit of honey can be great after you've steeped it. Mullein leaf, one of the traditional ways you may have heard of for using it is actually as a smoke or as a smoke blend, but I don't recommend that right now with respect to fire season, because that changes the energetics of the leaf from moistening and somewhat neutral, maybe mildly cooling, to hot and dry, because you're burning that leaf. So that's not really recommended right now, and getting the particulates from that mullein smoke would not be the way to go right now. It can be great in smoking blends, but not now. So tea is going to be a good way to go. Just you're getting that water in the body, some moistening and cooling during fire season. So again, mullen's a ubiquitous weed. It's very common throughout North America and Europe and Asia. If you live somewhere really, really dry, maybe you won't see it, like in the desert, but it's pretty common. Now, it is important, if you are going to go out and try to find this yourself rather than buying it at an herb shop, to know your plant identity 110%. I have seen people around where I live confuse mullein with houndstooth. Cynoglossum is the botanical name of that plant, and it's a really beautiful plant that's related to comfrey and contains some liver toxins. And so you want to really make absolutely sure it's mullein you're going for. And if you don't know, then go with somebody who does. Look for local herb walks and such. Get a good herb book. I don't have my Michael Moore book in front of me, but there are some great books that can help you identify this plant. And another way to be a little bit more sure you've got mullein is to look for the old flowering stalks. They'll be brown the following year, and anywhere from a couple feet tall to 5 feet tall. And that can tell you that the patch you have is mullein. Actually, I am going to grab my Michael Moore book to show you, because it's right here. And maybe that gave you a lovely view of Milo in the background. So this is for my region, medicinal plants of the Mountain West, and he'll give you a good description of mullein if you don't already know it. So that's mullein. The other one that I think is really appropriate right now during the dry hot season here in Colorado and for wildfire season is mallow. So the Malvaceae family, most members, or all as far as I know, can be used interchangeably. So you may have heard of marshmallow, which was originally the plant used to make the candy marshmallow, but now marshmallows that you get in the grocery store are basically cow hooves and corn syrup. It used to be made from the root, the carbohydrate-rich root of marshmallow. So marshmallow is a plant that is a Eurasian native and does grow naturalized in damper places in the U.S., so this is not a dryland plant. For those of us that live around Durango, this is not the mallow we're going to really see out in the wild, but you may be lucky enough to know somebody who does have this in their garden. So Althea officinalis, marshmallow, this is the mallow that you'll read about in most herb books. And the root is often what's talked about in the herb books, but the leaf can also be used as well. Now, we have a lot of different kinds of wild mallows here in the Four Corners regions, but also elsewhere, many places. And so here's a little baby wild mallow. They just mowed the vacant lot outside of where I live, and so we just have the little baby plants here. And this one is even getting ready to bloom. Let's see. There we go. So the flower will be a really pretty little pink flower. This leaf is a little bit bigger and somebody's been munching on it. So here. Now this can get quite large, these leaves. Again, they just mowed the vacant lot outside of where I live, so the big leaves are gone. This is wild mallow. We have Malva neglecta that is very common around here. So if you have a yard or a greenhouse or a garden, it's likely that this plant is a volunteer. And again, you can use the root or the leaves. If it's blooming, throw the flowers in as well. Hollyhock. So if you happen to be growing hollyhocks, which are big, beautiful mallow plants with big old flowers, you might not want to chop your leaves and flowers off, but you can actually use hollyhock flower leaves, root, and the flowers too. You might have Malva parviflora, cheeseweed, and that's named because the seed pod looks like a little wheel of cheese, although hollyhock seeds look like that too. That's another mallow you could use, and there are many other mallow plants that you can look up. So the root is great, the leaves are great, you can toss in the flowers if you got them. This is another moistening or demulcent herb for dry, irritated airways and sore throat, chronic airway inflammation, also traditionally used for acute mucous membrane issues. And this, again, is best as a tea. When we're doing respiratory stuff, teas are great. You can also use hydroethanolic extracts. They're very convenient, but in that case, you would take them with lots of water. But teas can be a good way to go. And so mallow you can also make like a regular tea. Again, a teaspoon of dried chopped herb per 8 ounces of water, or about a tablespoon or so of fresh. But what's really best is to make it as what's known as a cold infusion. And what that means is, say you have mallow leaf, toss in however much you're steeping into a jar of room temperature water and let it steep for 8 hours, or just let it steep overnight and it'll be ready for you in the morning. And this will make a slimier brew. And while slimy doesn't sound appetizing, it actually tastes really good and goes down really well when it's hot and dry out and there's a lot of crud in the air. And again, you can store this in the fridge for a few days if you want to make a big batch of it. Also, mallow is a great example of food as medicine. So the greens, the leaves are very nutritious, and the flowers are antioxidants. So they go really well in smoothies and in salads and such. The texture might take a little bit of getting used to. So if you have not been a big mallow leaf eater before now, work your way up. But it is, I think it's quite tasty. And so a great thing to add into your salads, to add into your smoothies, maybe with some other greens. Now, again, both of these plants are widespread in many places. Know your ID of the plant, know any potential contraindications for you, and things like that. And just some general support right now, especially if the smoke is really heavy where you are, is taking your outer layers of clothing off before you come into the house so that you're not bringing those smoke particulates in. That might mean getting butt naked depending on how hot it is where you are. But, certainly if you're wearing a jacket or a shawl or something like that, and if it's stinky and full of smoke, you might not want to bring that into your living space. So if you have a garage or entry area, maybe you can leave it there. And I think I'll leave it at that for now. So any questions and comments are, of course, welcome, and I will respond as I see them to useful plants. If you are nervous at all about harvesting plants, then don't do it. Get them at an herb shop. If you don't have a local herb shop, there are some wonderful places online, or good quality herb companies that you can turn to. And look to those herb companies that offer ethically wildcrafted and or organically grown herbs. And until the next time, be well, everybody, and take care of yourselves.